to that Sith Master. Let's find out.
Indeed, the Apprentices of Beastie now on the roll here. CoRe versus Numudan on Lipany. CoRe rocking the English in blue and Numudan in command of the Rus in red.
Should be a fun one, cool. Whipping out what it's kind of his signature English, I think it's fair to say at this stage. This guy knows the Civ inside out. The only other Civ I've seen him play as much as this would probably be the HRE. He does do a mean Rus as well, but my thought here is he probably didn't want to have a Rus mirror to open up this series, so just kind of conceded that Numudan would be the one whipping those boys out.
Indeed, he did ban Abbasids away from Numudan, whereas himself, he lost access to his own Rus. He probably didn't want to risk pulling out his Abbasids, implying that he probably was expecting the Rus indeed from Numudan.
Let's see what he can do in this one, though. To start off with, he is definitely... Well, you can see this guy has been coached by Puppy Boy. I mean, he's got an ability to call upon other puppies. That's a lot of wolves that he's dragged away, and frustratingly for Numudan, it means a lot of eco he's going to be missing out on.
Yeah, that's a juicy 75 gold out there, although on the northern side, Numudan is going to collect at least some wolves out there, so he's going to have a reasonable amount of bounty at least, but as you said, not terrific. He is only at 80 right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're early at this point. He's probably dragging a few around with him, so I imagine it's probably like a 250 game. The thing I'm looking at afterwards is where the ball is located, and in this game, they're not actually located in that desirable of a location, right?
It depends on what you want to do, really, if you think about that. These are not good boar spots for proxy bases. On the other hand, these are perfect boar spots for those pocket ecos that you can defend, and they're just kind of away from the central part of the map where the engagements usually happen. So you could actually argue that these boars in this civilization matchup are actually better for Numudan than one, let's say, in the middle of the map. Especially because the English, if they play their standard longbow-based composition for a while, they don't have a lot of mobility, so most of the fights indeed will be happening in the middle of the map rather than these outlying areas where the boars are located at.
That's true. And another thing to consider is that a lot of the time people playing on the boars are going for that secondary TC as well. So playing it away from the center, plays it well away from the battlefield. I think the idea that the Rus ball play is only about building a proxy base militarily is kind of gone. A lot of people just want that secondary TC now.
Yeah, or even if it's not a secondary TC, at least the hunting cabin there, just the extra source of food is what really matters here.
Just all about manipulating the map to the best of your abilities to offset your farm transition. And I say the Rus are one of those civs that can do a farm transition easier just because of the extra wood they get, but it still doesn't compare to how easily the English can do it because they get a 50% discount on those farms.
And also the English get the food boost from those farms, so it's not just about the farm transition you have to make with the Rus, it's also the fact that you're trying to match the food income of the English, and your farms will obviously be way worse when it comes to food income than a board would be.
Yeah, I think the thing about that is it's a little bit deceptive. Early on, they're closer than they appear, right, due to the bounty system, but I agree, by the time you're talking Castle Age and beyond, the English food gathering rates just feel unmatchable.
Feudal Age now coming in here. No farms in Dark Age for CoRe, so he's rushing Feudal as much as possible. Something that we have seen, once again, emerge in popularity recently. There was a period about 2 or 3 months ago when players started extending their Dark Age with the English and just focused a little bit more farming. Now we are back to the stage where the English players are usually just rushing Feudal and then only start dropping farms thereafter.
Yeah, it's that kind of idea that Dark Age only really serves an additional purpose when A, you're tower rushing, or B, there's water, right? Anything else, it just feels like you want feudal as quickly as possible, and it's so important for the English. Like, it's the point in the game when they get access to the only unique unit they have, and of course it is a powerful one in the early game, the Longbows.
And that's a big thing, especially because, ooh, Barracks coming out here straight away. Are we expecting Knights here, or is CoRe gonna go super aggro with Longbows and Spears?
I hope he's going aggro. My concern is, knowing the way that CoRe usually plays the English, this is a defensive formatting, so he's worried about aggression. I'm hoping that he's kind of evolved it, though. I think if you just sit back in this matchup and forfeit the mid-map, like, you're going to fall to pieces quickly.
Interesting point. You could possibly try to control those boars, although it is going to be a long shot to be able to deny both. And the thing that's scary over here is that seeing those longbows and spearmen come out, the Rus can just easily go for the archer ranges back at home and match your numbers. In fact, probably even overrun you with superior numbers.
Yeah, that's always the rough part about this matchup for the English, is your longbows one-on-one are better, right? Sure, because they got the extra range. extra damage. But where they really suffer is the fact that you're up against a Civ that gets 20% more wood. So the longer this fight goes on in Feudal, usually the worse it gets for the English, which is why you had to go first and go fast.
Yeah, but this is detected by Numudan. He actually torched down the mining camp, which means he saw CoRe not having a single gold miner out there, so he should know that this is full wood and food-focused eco, implying indeed a good old-fashioned longbow rush.
Yeah, it's more than just like a little bit of longbow pressure. It isn't all in. You saw the villager coming forward. He's going to build an outpost on the front side. The problem with this is going to take a minute to build now, compared to how it used to be a lot quicker. And you're up against an opponent who's now massing archers and horsemen. I'm a little bit worried as to whether he'll be able to set up a network quick enough.
I don't like that first tower. I think it's just way too far off. It's going to be a good fallback point, but this is buying a lot of precious time for Numudan, who knows very well what's going on. The only saving grace here could actually be the forest locations. Look at that, KP. I'm just now realizing that weakness and vulnerability.
There is a lot of wood on the right side, not so much on the west here for Numudan. He's definitely going to have to lean deeper in. Although the bad news for CoRe is this area, which has been highlighted by Vodka. Like, if a wall goes up there, it's free wood for Numudan. No pressure can be done. And that's the risk you run when you make these investments as the English. You have to remember these Lombos alone are 90 resources each.
Oh, the villager!
Whoops. You can see the problem here. It takes so long now, an extra 15 seconds compared to where it used to be. He could have actually maybe finished it off if it was the old build time on the outpost, but instead gets taken down. Archer's trained out to get rid of the spearmen, and it means the horsemen are getting maximum value.
Terrific trade out there, indeed. Losing a couple of units on Numudan's side, but he killed the villager, buying himself so much time. In fact, he continues to take this engagement over here with the horsemen, finishing off all the longbows. This aggression from CoRe is already falling apart.
There's a big oops moment now for CoRe, and well, he didn't give himself scalability back at home. Didn't go on the stone, so didn't set up for that at all. And the worrying issue for him now is probably thinking himself. He knows the Roost inside now after all, is that after this, it's very easy for a Roost player to just think about going to secondary TC. At which stage your economy is going to fall clearly behind.
And the thing is, the escalation potential, you just forfeit that tower. This is something that's spotted by Numudan. Numudan knows fully well that now CoRe is going to have to fall back into his base, so he can place that secondary TC essentially wherever he wants to. It could be on the board, it could be on the hunt. He knows fully well that CoRe is not going to contest it.
We'll see if he goes into it. It might be that he just chooses to double down now in a very early win condition, and I could see that working considering he has a good comp to do so. This Lombo count, taking that heavy hit, it sets CoRe back. And now you can see he's transitioning to farms, but the concern is that secondary TC now going up on the deer means that Numudan isn't going to have to go for farms anytime soon. And now the weakness of his wood lines being blocked is no longer there.
Exactly, that's a beautiful TC spot out there. His wood lines will no longer be vulnerable. He secures a hunt for himself. And the thing is that the return of investment on that second TC is much faster than the return of investment on those farms for English. So this is definitely something where Numudan feels comfortable.
Even the down payment, right? Like if you do the maths on it, you're paying 100 of a resource to get 150 of another. And usually the resource you're paying with, like in the transition from like wood to gold, right? So there's a 20% extra wood gathered there anyway. So like when you start to map it out, there's actually a lot more clear savings when to go into another TC for the Roost compared to most civs in the game.
Indeed. And it's the escalation potential compared to CoRe right now, because CoRe is sitting on one town center. So over time, Numudan is really going to get that benefit from the second TC. And the problem for CoRe is that by the time he would be ready to escalate this and once again become the aggressor, Numudan is going to have a powerful enough eco to just match his numbers and hold off the assault.
And the tough part for the English is they struggle to defend on maps where they're a little bit open. I gotta say, this spawn of Lipany around the base, you got some wood lines to protect, but the battlefield ahead of you is very open, it's very vast, and the concern is that Numudan can start playing into mass horsemen or mass knights and easily find ways to dent your economy.
Speaking of economy, CoRe also started sending villagers to stone, so he's realizing that there's a second TC for Numudan, has to go for his own, but he's gonna be delayed doing so. And by the time he starts getting the value out of that, Numudan could be contemplating going into Castle Age, but for now, he needs to hold off this push first.
And Numudan, of course, has other deer to the north side that's a little bit more safe down the line. And when you consider that CoRe is running racks plus archery range type units, he has no way of going out there. So long-term, Numudan is fairly safe here.
Yeah, he is. And the most important thing is that he's got 3 scouts roaming the map, so he knows fully well what's up, and he's going to have a clear vision on the army approaching.
His archers need to find some value, but it's so difficult to dive the TC. The problem is, like, yeah, you have the extra range, but you move slow away, and TC's always outrange you. And my concern right now is the blacksmith upgrades may come through a little bit late. Or should allow Numudan to continue to escalate. But instead of going for more horsemen, I wouldn't be surprised if he does just go for the castle age now. I mean, when you see 10 longbowmen, 10 spearmen outside your base, you don't really feel threatened at this stage.
Yeah, that's the key thing, right? Indeed, he's banking up resources, but he still has 3 stables to work with, so any moment he sees a push come in, he could still just double down on the army count. Sees no push though, so he's going to move out towards the boar and start piling up resources for Castle Age. This is very scary for CoRe. Just now finishing the second TC, but he feels like he's gonna be 2 steps behind here.
Yeah, he backed off entirely because he got paranoid. We have to remember that when you go into that choke point, there's a flank point to the west, so at any point Numudan could have came round and cut off his retreat. CoRe has to be so delicate on the way that he finesses this, and because he only has 2 scouts and they are fairly condensed together, he's limited in vision to kind of inform these players. And you can see what's happening right now as Numudan is weaving through the fog, actually going on the aggressive before CoRe can.
This could be very scary for CoRe. He was heading for that hilltop out there, almost getting himself trapped. For the time being, he's just struggling to keep pace with that army because now he's facing horsemen and his lack of mobility is starting to show.
Cool. Come back around. Looking for that fight, but Numudan, he's going deeper. Horsemen are already breaching in, and the archers are looking to slow down this assault, this return home, while the horsemen flood in on the farms and start to idle eco CoRe's base. Meanwhile, Numudan, back in his own, is now close to having what he needs for Castle Age, and he just forced an entire static army to come back home.
He didn't just idle eco, he killed 2 farmers, which is massive value. These horsemen don't have a tremendous amount of damage output on the villagers, so being able to yoink 2 from those farms so close to the TC is immense value for Numudan. He's now up by 8 eco and he's about to head to Castle Age, ready to start picking up those relics scattered across the map.
That's worrying because CoRe's nowhere near Castle Age. He's going to probably be forced to double down on his feudal timing and try to end the game fast, and it's difficult to do that. The advantage you do have is Lombos do well against horse archers, but I'm concerned about the almost inevitable arrival now of Rus heavy cavalry.
Or even men-at-arms, if you think about that. Feels like an awkward idea, but as something that just deals with the already existing army of CoRe, it could be a good bridging unit for Numudan. Looks like he just wants to go for knights though.
Yeah, it just makes sense. Like, the men-at-arms seems like a good idea, but it's slow, right? And the issue is you're going to be diving into an English base. That's double arrow fire, that's attack speed.
True.
You just want a way of trading, and the knights are just superior for that. I think what mattered to Numudan is whether he had enough food income, and considering the boar and the deer play, he should be well settled for that.
And look at the walls, beautiful walls those are. Securing one of the sacred sites, 2 relics as well, guaranteeing all those forests out there as well for him. The map control is also starting to fall in his favor, and as he's about to hit Castle Age, the panic button needs to be pressed now by CoRe.
These horsemen feel completely unanswered, no? Like, I don't see how CoRe gets a favorable fight because of how open 4 of his base is. I feel like he was forced to make this early move because of how open the front of his base is.
I think the bigger concern is that he simply can't break out of his base. So he has the response for them in the form of the spearmen, which could still be picked apart by the archers. The bigger concern right now is that he's just stuck in his base. He's fine defending. The problem is that he's forfeiting all map control, which could easily yield Numudan 4 or 5 relics, 2 or 3 sacred sites, both boars possibly, and we've already seen Numudan expanding towards the hunts as well. So it's not even the fact that he can't respond to that unit comp, it's just the fact that he can't take a good enough engagement for him to justify to committing to one.
Yeah, it's the fact that he can't actually force him to fight. That's always the issue with the English in this comp. It's just so slow and so unwieldy, especially on a more open generation Epiphany like this. There's no denying the center of the map is very open. And I think that's why he needed that staging point deep in the tree lines. It was a good idea by CoRe, but you see exactly why these early tower rushes from the English just don't work anymore.
Indeed. Now the Castle Age upgrades are getting very close for Numudan. CoRe tried to force a fight here, but that is where the lack of mobility for English longbows come into play. They are slower than ordinary archers, so Numudan can always just run away, buy himself some time to get the Castle Age upgrades, and then force a fight, something that he's about to do.
Marching forward with a decent amount of archers to target out the spears, and of course those horsemen, although somewhat irrelevant compared to the knights, they do function as good cannon fodder. And Numudan likely to dive in for a fight as soon as the archer upgrade is complete, because at that point CoRe will not be able to take favorable trades. Actually now, villagers trying to rush it up. You see they can't hang around. clash almost seems inevitable as the spearmen start to get baited in range, and the problem is that the outpost is not up, no staging point, at least has the TC to protect for the moment. But the issue is the knights and horsemen are baiting you into defending, and that spearman count is starting to whittle down. About to go into single digits here, retreats under the double TC fire. Problem is Idle Eco alongside this, a lot of villagers are not working those farms, and it's still a trade in favor of Numudan.
And that trade was taken before the Castle Age upgrades came in. That's where it gets terrifying, especially when you see those knights jumping on the villagers. Oh.
There's no way. There's no way out. They need to make it back to the TC quick, but the idle time alone is also once again going to hurt CoRe. He's now finding himself 12 villages behind. He just gathered up what he needed. Now he's making his way up into Castle Age, but he does so with gluttony. It looks like it is going to be the King's Palace. Okay, thank God. I thought it was a King's Palace. I was about to lose my mind. White Tower makes more sense here. Thank goodness. However, it is far from complete, and Numudan is willing to dive to prevent it.
Exactly. He knows that delaying this is so valuable over here, and right now, CoRe simply can't finish that landmark. In fact, torches being thrown.
Sir, you forgot to continue here, sir. You need to get this. There's a new wave coming behind this Lidakor, and it's even more knights. Oh my, oh my. I don't know how he's going to get it up if he waits too long here. Like, I think the second wave should be good enough to keep him contained.
And look at that, spearman numbers almost disappearing from the battlefield. Archers can be taken down by the town center fire, but the knights, they're just too armored for that. CoRe is going to have to rush this castle up desperately, but it could come at a massive price for him. Could easily end up losing his army and possibly a dozen of villagers too.
The irony of his name, CoRe, yet it's always people at the core of his base, as it is in this situation. Knights marching in, limited spearman to counter, but the attack speed, able to trade out okay. The issue is the archer ball that is still unanswered. Somehow they have been standing underneath the double TC for what feels like an eternity, and yet they still stand. They still delay, and once again they will do exactly that, as the White Tower is only half complete, and now CoRe is 22 villages behind.
And half of those villagers that he still has alive are idle, garrisoned inside those town centers. And you see, the archers have no desire to leave. They just keep pushing and pushing, denying the farms. Tremendous damage being done here by Numudan. One has to wonder what options CoRe has left over here in this game.
Game 2, I think, is the option he has left. You know, it's a series, so it kind of counts as the same game, but this one is looking pretty chalked. He walled himself in, sure, he's got plenty of farms, but he's just not reaching that escalation point. He might finally get the castle up, but the price is going to be high. Numudan, now going for the third TC, is going to maintain that eco lead. And keep in mind, because he has full map control, he can easily go and collect the last of the relics. So far, he's only taken the 2 mid-map ones. He's still got 2 more safe at home.
Yeah, those are the safe ones. He can delay this a tiny bit, but indeed, you can tell that he was so focused on those fights that he completely forgot to continue taking the sacred sites, taking the relics as well. But he also had the 3rd TC here, so once again, escalation potential massively on his side. And now, switching into the men-at-arms, he is surprising choice given the fact that CoRe is about to reach Castle Age. You don't really want to engage into men-at-arm warfare against the English.
Interesting choice, but if he feels like he can just dive the way he did, if you think about the way that last fight played out, Numudan just wanted units that could stand under TCs and not care. And men-at-arms will do that. It's a bit more difficult with the White Tower, though. I wonder if he's just trying to bootleg the Night Line and then use the savings to go into Siege.
He could also be expecting Knights from CoRe here. If you think about that, you don't really want to continue with the longbow comp being so much behind. So this might actually be for Spearmen for Numudan rather than men-at-arms. He's gonna yoink the relic. Yoink.
Hello. Nobody here to stop me from taking this. It's
yoink.
Just gonna stick this in my backpack and to make my way home. Buckaroo on my way out. How long before he realizes? And how many walls are in the way?
Ooh, he could just bump into the spearman out there. Although, let's be honest, that was a long shot to grab. So for him, if he grabs that, it's magic. If he fails to do so, well, tough luck, but I guess he's gonna survive. I mean, not the warrior monk, but he himself.
Bye. He's like, fine, that's fine, I'm out of here. They're not very quick. Even if he dies, it's going to be in a position where CoRe won't be able to retrieve it. I don't see him ever going for a monastery now. I think there's just not enough wood long-term for him. He needs it elsewhere, and oh no, looking elsewhere, knights are in.
Oh, it's got bigger problems.
I mean, the problem is so many of these farms could be shut down. even if you keep most of the villagers alive, once again, it's stunting your growth, and you just started investing in knights. Those are not cheap.
Not at all. And as you said, so much idle time out there. Also, once again, losing villagers. And keep in mind, you're up against 3 TCs now. So Numudan is going to have a very convincing eco lead off the back of the relics and the villager lead. And it's starting to snowball.
He's still alive, Lidakor. He hasn't even gone down with these knights. They've barely been tickled in the back. Best part is they can just run out the other side because the wood lines are too thin. Instead, he's just extracting maximum value. CoRe now 67 villagers, while Numudan is up 104 and about to bank the 5th relic.
And he also has 2 sacred sites, about to get the 3rd. And he's adding battering rams now. He wants to finish this game soon. Surprisingly, he's not mining stone. I would have expected him to start mining some stone and drop a keep on his opponent, something that we're seeing more and more commonly. But instead, he's working on trebuchets from a siege workshop all the way back at home. Curious choice it is from him.
I mean, he has mid-map control, right? I'm glad he didn't go Rams. I don't think Rams does anything here. The trebuchets are definitely getting this game fast. You got so much value condensed in one location, and you know, some people might question, why did CoRe go for that white tower? Was that a bit of a game throw? He had to in this game. He needed to get his hands on network and Citadel's on defensive. He needed a stabilization point. I think he made the right choice, but the problem is this choice never feels right to make, even when it is. You know what I mean? When your hands are tied and you know it's suboptimal, but you have to do it. That's how I always feel about the white tower.
Yeah, you really have that feel. Like, people want to play greedy nowadays, and you want to do that with the King's Palace. You had to go for the White Tower, and this is something that Numudan knows fully well. He knows that you're playing from a position of weakness, seeing you build that landmark.
These knights, they get in just before they never would be able to again, but hesitant to say they'll do a lot of damage. I mean, there's plenty of villages out here, but I don't know if they're going to last long enough. My concern is what's happening around the mid-map. The forces are building up fast. Numudan is getting ready to breach. Trebuchet count is going to get scary fast here. The issue for CoRe is playing the English, so getting anti-siege out is not easy at this stage.
Army numbers are rather close. It's 60 to 68. The bigger problem for CoRe is that most of his army is spearmen and longbows. And if you take a look at Numudan, he's mostly operating with archers and men-at-arms. You get the feel that Numudan's composition here is a lot more promising.
Yeah, Numudan is hybridized for defense, so he knows that by going trebuchets, CoRe has to come to him. He won't be happy about it because that means that you're going to be an English player playing out of Aura Rage. You can already see the lack of glow here. You're probably going to see the color starting to drain from his face. This is not a good fight to have to take like this. Knights trying to wrap around. Attack speed Aura is going to be triggered there, which is why Numudan will back away. He doesn't want to enable the entire army. Instead, he'll just wait. He knows the trebuchets instead can deal with that outpost, while his archers and crossbows trade out. Now the front line is gone, he'll go back in. These Lombos will struggle to stand their ground, and once again, CoRe is going to be forced to shrivel up and hide in his own base.
CoRe just having that last stand over here, trying to hold off the archers and the man-at-arms and the longbows, but this feels like a desperate defense over here. The only type of unit he still has left are the longbows, getting overrun by the archers and the man-at-arms. There is soon nowhere to run for him.
Credit where credit is due to Numudan. Most people would not go crossbowmen against the English just because of how longbows trade, but it didn't stop him, it didn't hold him back. It just meant he was prepped for anything that was going to come to him. And the thing about this map, the way it's been played by Numudan, is CoRe had to come out to him. And as a result, every time he's tried, he has failed. As once again, he's going to fail. And this time, behind this push, there are trebuchets, which will slowly get rid of all this infrastructure that last time Numudan couldn't when he was here.
That's the big thing, right? You don't have to finish this game right now. You just gotta shatter the infrastructure and make it impossible for CoRe to recover. And you see, those trebuchets, those will keep forcing CoRe out of his base, forcing him to take suboptimal fights, oftentimes without the aura.
That's the thing. By the time you are fighting under aura, you know Numudan's doing it because he has a clear lead. Oh my, this is about to get dangerous. As soon as that white tower goes down, a new line of knights could be built and dive in. And remember, the boys' fortitude's on the way, so they're going to be even more tanky.
Yeah, that's the scary thing. I mean, he was able to accomplish all of this without Boyar's fortitude, which is just shocking, really.
Yeah. He did... And someone will give him credit for, actually. Numudan prioritized the level 2 ranged armor over getting boys' fortitude. That's the right call here. It's just so impressive how much that adds to your effective HP when you're up against mass lombos and English defenses like this.
Who would have thought range defense works really well against longbows, right?
I mean, that's where the Battle of Agincourt is historically confusing. Most people just think longbows were shot and knights died. It wasn't. It's like the cavalry got taken down and we fought in mud. So like basically that's how we screwed the knights. It was very difficult. Like, if you seriously, if you look at historically, even for Lombos, it was very difficult to breach knight armor correctly.
Well, there is a reason why crossbows were invented after all.
Oh, I don't know. That's a deeper discussion, Lidakor. Crossbows were actually invented because it's much easier to train people in range combat with crossbows than longbows. And bows in general.
Yes and no. I mean, crossbows were difficult to manufacture, but yeah, true. Training longbows, like, that's a big thing. Imagine if you had the training time for longbows as if it was realistic in this game.
I mean, it's like yeah, you have to train your whole childhood, right? It's like that was the difference, I think. But yeah, it's like an interesting little historical fact since we've got like a slow moment here. When it comes to the reason why like bows, arrows and such didn't work on heavily armored units, it's because of the angles. But you know what? The angle approach was good. I was wondering how long we'd have to wait. It felt like it was over. CoRe finally accepted his defeat. Numudan would take map number 1.
Indeed, convincing game from him, and really, you got the feel that CoRe had that tower rush all-in style approach at the beginning, set his sights upon, and after that, everything just fell apart and he had to adapt to a game that he really felt uncomfortable in, and Numudan's escalation was just light years better because Numudan played a game that he wanted to play, whereas for CoRe, he had to play a game completely different from his original game plan.
Yeah. It felt like it was off rails for a long time. Numudan had control of this game. He'd have to basically choke to lose this past, I said, about the 15-minute mark with the way it's being played out. CoRe just got stuck in that typical rut of being the English and the...
Indeed,
strong choice as well.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say this is CoRe's favorite Civ, by the way. This is where he goes when everything looks dark.
And things do look dark for him right now. He's down 1 game here in the last September weekly. Obviously, these players are not only competing to possibly try to get a miracle run here in the last weekly and then get themselves a direct ticket to Heidelberg. It's also the fact that these players are competing for weekly points because they need to secure a spot in the monthly finals, in which only the top 16 performance of the September month from those unqualified will eventually get a spot. So part of this, of course, for them is making sure that they will have a chance to play next weekend in the September monthly to get a ticket.
And Numudan's a scary guy for a lot of people. He came out of nowhere, gave some big upsets last week, and he's being praised by some very talented people in the community. So a lot of people have their eyes on this guy. Now, what you have to question is whether he got that far because people weren't really expecting what he was offering, or if he's really the dog's bollocks here. And I think this is where he proves it. If he can get a deep run here, then people are like, okay, this isn't just people weren't recognizing his strategy and reacting. This guy has some depth, some potential.
Indeed, it's the matter of, is he a one-hit wonder type of a person? He has had a good run in one of those weeklies before, but is this a single-time occurrence, or is this something that he can accomplish consistently? Based on game number 1, he's able to perform in a really consistent level among these pro players, and as you said, many of the high-level players also sang praises of him, especially his mindset, his ability to keep grinding, keep playing against stronger players, keep losing but learning from those losses. That's the kind of mindset he has, and that's something that would easily propel him to possibly even become one of the sneaky candidates to qualify to Heidelberg, either through the monthly qualifiers or the last chance qualifiers.
Yeah, something I love. Apparently, Numudan wants to get a win against every player. Like, it's just a random thing, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win everything, but like that's kind of his realistic goal to start with, right? And he wants to build from there. I love that. It's cool to have that kind of branch, that pathway, and that confidence to say, I will beat every single player in this game at least once, and I won't stop until I have.
And that's the big thing, right? It's the not stopping until you have beaten them all. That's the big thing. Many could just say, oh yeah, I don't even want to get matched up against Beastie. Well, I just want to try playing against rank number 47. No, he says, okay, if I get Beastie, I'm going to play against him and I want to beat him. And I will try and keep trying until I actually succeed.
Yeah, that was something I noticed when I was casting them playing some private games against each other last week. Is just Numudan kept going and going and going. Yeah. And it's weird because, you know, you could see it looked like maybe he's getting fatigued or maybe he's getting worn down, but like he wasn't giving up. He's like, no, this is premium education right now, because anyone who wants to make it the top knows that the best way to improve is actually getting the crap kicked out of you over and over again.
100%. In fact, many pro players say that one of the best ways for an up-and-coming player to really get good is just keep playing against better players, because if you keep beating players that are weaker than you, or dare I say, at an even level with you, it's not going to get you anywhere. What is going to get you anywhere is being able to play and slowly improve against better competition. And this is something that Numudan has been doing. And we have had some pro players emerge like that. Like if you think about the fact how Vam, Papipo emerged, they also started like this. They started slow and then slowly started scrimming more and more with these pro players and ultimately reached top 8 both.
Yeah, people have different styles. Like to the Puppy point you mentioned, I know his approach was very kind of like layered with this idea of taking the game and dissecting it piece by piece, perfecting the first 10 minutes, perfecting the first 20 minutes, etc., etc. Now, the only problem with that strategy is it really can fall flat if you end up inadvertently into a lot of hour-long games, but it's a really cool, elegant way to break down a complicated game. And I think you have to have these different styles, and more important than that, I just think someone that has always stuck true with me is that the greatest winners are actually the biggest losers. And it's something hard for us to process because if you look at a lot of things, a lot of different sports, we always glorified the person who had like a 20 win streak and no losses in their career. It's just BS. The most impressive fighters, the most impressive competitors are always the ones who have hundreds of losses to go alongside their win streaks.
That's an interesting point indeed, but yeah, true that. If you think about that, losing will teach you how to avoid specific things. It also puts you into a special mindset, like being able to process falling behind in a series, being able to recover, and really, it can improve your mindset in a way that might not be almost unthinkable for players that are just consistently successful.
Oh, well, let's see if Numudan's aggression is going to be successful. Being up against the HRE, it can feel very awkward to try and hit your timing with aggression early on as the English. And so far, we are seeing 3 longbows has forced a reaction in the stables. I actually like this opening. This is something I've seen a lot of English players do, where they feign aggression to get a reaction.
Ooh, look at that. That's going to be a tower spot as well. Very reminiscent play from Numudan to what we have seen from CoRe in game number 1. Now, stable, almost complete. The big difference here is that we don't have archers out there just yet, so it's gonna take some time for CoRe to get the first horseman out, and nothing else to snipe that villager with. So, in comparison to game number 1 where CoRe tried something similar, there is much smaller of a chance for CoRe to snipe that one villager, and this tower could easily go up. In fact, I'm actually wondering whether CoRe has vision on that.
I don't think he does to the south. He's got the south, yeah. So he knows about this, but he's not reacting because he only has 1 horseman right now, and he's not going to make a villager pool because it's 4 longbows. But overall, Numudan's approach to this is just much better. He didn't rush out the spearman and longbow straight away. He waited for a reason to do so, and it's why this should be a lot more effective than what we saw CoRe attempt last game.
And this is scary for CoRe because the other problem with the HRE is that they don't want to stay in feudal. When Numudan was defending against this push with the English, using the ruse, he's happy to stay in feudal. HRE, not so much.
No, I've talked about this. Like, it's kind of weird, actually. I think one of the big issues with the HRE, why they can kind of look broken, is they get all this extra resource, and there's questions about why we don't see them use feudal better or longer. The reality is that trying to use it at an early age, long term, feels difficult simply because of the fact that you can't really escalate your military count quickly, right? Whereas an HRE player benefits a lot more from just rushing castle because I can have that by 8 or 9 minutes. Like, how big can your army technically be by 8 or 9 minutes?
Especially if you consider that worst case scenario, you age up with the Burgrave Palace, and your army escalation is going to be much more rapid if you just rush castle and then go Burgrave rather than trying to do something in feudal with your army.
Yeah, it's just this idea that like the HRE should be able to deal with pretty much any civ early on because of how efficient their economy is. But it's just like, you could just age up and be better off for it. Like, when you do the maths on it, how big your army could be at 10 minutes versus like being in castle age and having units out there, like it doesn't make any sense to play prolonged feudal unless you absolutely have to.
And looks like CoRe has no desire to play prolonged feudal. He's going to reach castle age in about a minute or so, aging with the Regnitz Cathedral far away from the battlefield, making sure Numudan can't deny this.
It's just tough for the English because you're building static infantry you can't wrap around easily. Like, I've seen a few players try to do it, but I've seen especially on LTI, it's actually very difficult to do regularly. The only thing that's going to redeem him in this is the fact that CoRe only went for 2 horsemen. So Numudan should be able to move around in their position, but he seems hesitant.
Oh, this is interesting. Ooh, horseman raid coming in here. This could be annoying, but I think one thing that could be... CoRe deleted it! He's scared.
Oh my... Yeah, he should be scared. Like, he knew it was going to start getting spotted out at that rate, and he wasn't building it quick enough. But this delays his timing, and now... Wait, is he switched to Burgrave?
Possibly. I think so. It's also on the
he
front.
He switched to Burgrave on the offensive. Yeah, it's in the stealth forest. Screw this. I want there we go. That's the important detail. Burgrave is coming. Cool. Confident he has enough food to win this, but the timing, no!
This could be a disaster, KP.
I mean, he's got nothing to defend with. Like, CoRe, this is so greedy. It's weird to say this with the Burgrave, but it's the whole layout of the way they've done this, the timing as well, it's incredibly greedy. The Lombos are going to reach in. A bunch of villages are going to be going down. He just idled several villages into the outpost. That now slows down his castle age timing even more. And keep in mind that Numudan is going for his own castle age timing behind this.
Terrific reactions by Numudan. He probably realized there were just so few villagers anywhere in the base of CoRe. He has to be using them for aging. Tries to pull the Prelate for healing, but the damage being done here is massive.
Honestly, I'm getting brain damage watching this one. Cool. Like, are you going to cancel it again? Are we going to make a third? I don't think you can. You have to commit. Oof. You have to commit to hitting the GG. Numudan does not waste any time. Cool. Aspirations will have to be delayed another week, bud, because it's not your week here.
What a game here from Numudan. The reactions, they were just so swift. CoRe tried to squeeze out that castle agent. Maybe if he commits to the Ragonites, it would have been better than just trying to restart the Burgrave, but I guess he wanted to just sneak that Ragonites up at the back. Didn't expect Numudan to be that swift, swinging to the other side of his base. Ultimately, gets caught with his pants down as he was aging up, and Numudan pulls off a really good longbow rush over here, showing CoRe how it needs to be done. CoRe himself being unable to do that in game number 1.
I feel like people just sleep on the mountainside there. Like, they're so used to it protecting them, but it's usually loose spawned enough that you can walk around like Numudan did there. And it's just the kryptonite for CoRe. I mean, the other problem here is he goes from Regnitz into Burgrave, so he can't even invest the food into cavalry then because he needs it for the heavily armored units when he gets castle. It just feels like you've lost at that point. I'm not surprised CoRe GG, even if he completes that Burgrave. I have no doubt in my mind that he won't do anything with it.